RJ, it has been a while since we've both been able to be here right away for a
I
post game
know.
live. We get to talk though about. I mean, is this the best game of the season this year
I,
for the Seattle Kraken?
I think so. I think it has to be. It's their most impressive effort and just an incredible game in this one, a gutsy performance. And I don't think there's a time all season where they really needed it more than they did tonight.
Yeah, they needed it a lot, and you could just tell that they wanted this one. And today, I kind of had a feeling that this was going to be the result. I really did believe in things just because of some of the stuff that they were talking about after the last one. And Dan talking about how going on this road trip and going up against teams that you're going to be the underdog for in those games, and how that can bring out a different mentality in the group. Jared McCann talking about needing to have that different mentality when you go into a place like Carolina and you face a Hurricanes team that's doing as well as they've been doing all year. I just thought, you know what, this feels like kind of what the Kraken need, what this group needs to go out there, give their best effort, start fast, start on time tonight, RJ. That's what they did, and just kind of dominate the full 60. And I think that's really what's the most impressive part about all this, is just that they played the way we knew that they could play, but they were able to do it through all three periods. And this is the result of them being able to do that kind of finally.
Right. The Kraken put pressure on the Canes from the opening puck drop. We saw that incredible goal 19 seconds into the game, but really the entire time, the Canes couldn't get much going offensively. And I think that's the big story for me, is just the stifling, suffocating, shutdown defense the Kraken were playing. And the stat of the night, I think, was that the Kraken only allowed 16 shots on goal. That is Carolina's lowest shot total in over a decade. Nobody has been able to do that to Carolina in a long, long time. And even then, that total was pretty high, given at the very end, they got a few shots with the goalie pulled and all that stuff, right? The defensive effort, just to a man, was so good, which I think was maybe even needed a little bit, given that Joey Daccord, again, he was fine, but there were a few moments, right, where he looked potentially shaky, but the Kraken did not leave it to chance whatsoever.
Pucks did seem like they were still kind of getting through them a little bit there. They just weren't always for goals. But yes, this was a big team effort. I think the thing that impressed me most was that they were able to kind of play that the way that they want to play, RJ, and they were not able to do that at all in the game against Carolina here in Seattle. But here they were able to go out there, just kind of put pressure on Carolina with their speed. The amount of times the Kraken were able to get behind the defense of Carolina in that first period was impressive. And you could tell that it was making Carolina very uncomfortable. They were not really sure what to do in those situations. They were not happy with the way the game was going there at the very beginning. And I think that that just kind of kept them then from being able to build off of their normal foundation of having a solid back end and being able to move the puck up the ice and all of that kind of stuff. I think the Kraken being able to kind of draw them into this back and forth, fast paced game for that first period, that was a big deal for establishing the tone of this and kind of throwing off the Hurricanes really for what ended up being the rest of the night. And I think anytime you're an underdog team, RJ, and you can get the game kind of going back and forth like that, where just a bounce here or there is going to result in something, it really does even the playing field. And I think that that is something that on this road trip, particularly because the Kraken are not going to be the favorites on most nights, that's something that if they're able to replicate through some of these other games on this road trip, I think they could have similar results to tonight, or they're at least going to be playing in close games.
Right. I mean, it was a frustrating game for Carolina. Really, the whole time they weren't able to play the way they wanted to play. And Dan even said there's going to be a lot of stuff along the walls. There's going to be a lot of battles in those areas. And the Canes weren't able to take the puck to the areas that they wanted to. And I think that led to a lot of the Kraken success. And then also for a team that we at times have said maybe is allergic to momentum, the Kraken used that in their favor. They had that goal that was overturned, where would have been a huge moment in the game, Carolina taking the lead. And it seemed like the Kraken were able to take advantage of the Canes, maybe reeling a little bit after that one. I think it was the combination of, I think there was a missed call on Mahura, where Mahura tripped. I think it was Kakaniemi. Probably should have been called. No call there. The Canes didn't like that. Then you have the overturned goal. And I think Carolina maybe took the next couple minutes of being frustrated. Kraken took advantage.
Yep, they did. Gonna go ahead and start with the super chats here because we've got them all lining up here. First one from B: losing to the Ducks and the Sharks again, all badly at home, and then beating the Canes on the road may be the most Kraken thing I've ever seen. I got to agree with B. That is pretty historic Kraken stuff right there.
Absolutely. It doesn't make sense, but hockey doesn't make sense a lot of the time, it feels like, right?
Well, that's the thing about this sport is like I really tend not to want to react too much to one individual game, whether it's good or bad, just because like in this sport things just go wacky sometimes more than in any other sport. It can just be kind of random on any given night. But like I said earlier, the work that the Kraken were doing to come out fast, finally, something that everybody's been asking for a long time, and start the game and just play with that pace and really establish the tone. I mean, that's what this team was doing at the very beginning of the year, RJ, was they were kind of setting the tone, setting the pace for a game, controlling at least two of the three periods on any given night. And that's why they had some early success out of the gate. That's really what they did tonight. If they can just get back to that, that can become Kraken hockey. And then this will be, normal Kraken stuff to see, maybe.
Yeah, it sets a standard for the way you want to play that it felt like was lost over the last really month or so of hockey. And this has got to be the blueprint. Everyone knows, everyone sees how it's done.
Yep. Kraken fan here. Can't watch you live, but wanted to say it was good to see the team back in form again. Congrats to Winterton for his first point. Love seeing Turbo get the puck for him. Appreciate the super chat there, Kraken fan. Can't be with us live. That was a great play. Ryan Winterton being able to corral that puck, start moving up the ice, and then get the pass over to Turbo, where Turbo could keep playing it with speed, RJ. Like, that's an impressive pass to make, given kind of the situation Ryan Winterton was in, where he's kind of having to stretch really far out in front of him to be able to deliver that to Turbo in stride. I mean, that is definitely worthy of picking up a primary assist, if you ask me.
Like in football, a quarterback just leading the receiver in stride. Turbo didn't have to deviate from his path at all. And that's why he was able to beat Jacob Slavin, who's a pretty darn good defenseman. That is very hard to do, what Brandon Tanev did, but we know how fast he can be. And then as soon as he has a little bit of chops on breakaways, which we've seen this season, right? Tanev can score in those opportunities. So great to see all around.
Yes, and then Ryan Winterton picking up his first career point, very well earned. I think he's been playing fantastic during this call-up. I'm starting to wonder, RJ, if he just kind of stays the rest of this year. Like, I don't know that we're going to see Winterton really go back down to Coachella Valley anytime soon with the Jordan Eberle injury and all of that kind of stuff. And just because he's been playing really well here, at least, compared to some other guys that have been in and out of the lineup for the Kraken, he's at least been consistent.
Right. I'm with you there. And I think the coaching staff likes what they've seen from him. Remember, in training camp, it took a while for them to cut him. He was one of the last cuts, and I think he was really only cut because of salary cap and roster size considerations that the team had to make. Maybe they would have had him up more if not for that stuff. But now that they have a little bit of flexibility, I wouldn't be surprised to see him up here, for an extended period of time.
Yes, and definitely love Turbo getting the puck there so that Ryan Winterton can have that keepsake from his first NHL point. And then, of course, RJ, we've got Gregory in here, and you know what time that means? It is lemon lime Gatorade time, baby. Got the graphic up here. Let's go. Love that, and love Gregory being in here after the wins. As always, I've got the Gatorade ready to go, RJ. And he's also got turbo time, RJ. Brandon Tanev, what do you think is making this so that he can score on all these breakaways this year after really, 3 years of it just not happening for him?
I don't know. I mean, year one, he was able to score plenty when he had a breakaway. So maybe just regressing back to the mean. I don't know. It just feels like a law of averages type of thing. He doesn't literally have stone hands. Like, he's an NHL player. He can theoretically move around guys. I think it helps when the goalie, like Kochetkov did there, comes out and tries to poke him, because he was able to see that and move around it, where you don't need to pick a spot. You don't need to try and beat the goalie necessarily. You just need to recognize it and move out of the way. I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's been a big part of it, and he's not trying to do too much with it. He's not really trying to snipe, but he's not trying to do anything too fancy. He's just kind of taking what the goalies are giving him, and I think that's been, that kind of slightly more patient approach, I feel like, is really serving him well so far this season. Appreciate the Gatorade as always, Gregory. Definitely enjoy being able to use the graphic again because got the graphic and then wasn't able to use it for what, a week and a half. So
You narrated
appreciate
it
all
really
that.
well, though. It's better than the silence the first time around.
Yeah, I didn't know that I was gonna be able to talk over it. That's key. That's key right there.
Yes.
Um, Sean here, what an effort and what a response! Best game of the season and so needed. I mean, this was needed. Just to break out of the funk that they were in. RJ, get another 2 points on the board. We've talked about kind of how bunched up everybody is in the Western Conference. Some teams are starting to make the decision on whether or not they're going to be good or not, because that's a decision everybody's making consciously. But that is what, the way teams are starting to trend. It would be great if the Kraken could start trending in a positive direction here, especially on this road trip. This is a big way to kick off a road trip. And I don't want to be negative, RJ, but I do think, I want to bring up the way the last road trip started, which was with a huge win over Montreal. And then the subsequent 4 games were a mess, a disaster, maybe even some would say. I don't know that that's going to happen here after this one, because that was one where you were, you were taking advantage of a team that was really, really struggling. This was you kind of taking a good team and forcing them into a box and saying, no, you guys are just going to kind of stay there tonight and we're going to do our thing. Those are 2 very different ways to start a road trip, I feel like.
Absolutely. Quality of competition is super important, as I think we've seen this season with indicators of how the Kraken are playing. And yeah, Montreal is a bottom 5 team in the league. Carolina is a top 5 team in the league. It's a much more impressive win, even though you don't beat them 8-2. This game was much more difficult than that Montreal one. And so it gives me more hope that they're going to be able to continue this, because if they can just bottle this, what they did tonight, they should be able to beat most teams.
Yeah, I think that they should. I do wonder if we'll see like a little bit of an emotional hangover for the very next game, and what that might mean for this group. But I certainly don't think we're going to see what ended up happening last time, just given the effort and the consistent full 60 minutes that we got out of really everybody in the lineup tonight. That shouldn't be going anywhere, especially because this team really knew that they need to start playing with it. And I think that that's a big part of it. Coop with the super chat here. Appreciate all of these from everybody so far. Nobody has a harder time with empty net goals than us, lol. Huge W. RJ, we've talked about Brandon Tanev. He can score on breakaways now. This team, they're never going to score an empty netter.
I think it kind of mirrors how good they are 6-on-5 with the extra man. Maybe they're similar with the extra man against. I think they just committed to a strategy of just icing the puck whenever they could with the empty net
Tonight,
situation.
yeah.
Tonight, yeah. No, just in tonight. But I think that was a conscious decision that the players on the ice made, and it worked. With a 2-goal lead, I like that. You should just ice it as many times as you can if you don't have a clear path up. And so I at least like that strategy.
Right. And there was a time where it looked like McCann might be able to get a shot off at center ice where, it's not going to be a great look, but it wouldn't result in an icing. And he still decided to pass it over to the boards to Turbo, basically just to kind of kill more time, right? Turbo can maybe take it up the ice and kill a little bit more time. Maybe he gets into a better spot for the empty net goal. I'm with you. I think tonight the decision was made to just kind of like, let's focus on just getting out of this one. Let's not try to get too greedy with anything, given what we're coming in here and doing. So it is interesting though. Nobody gets easy goals on this team. That is for sure. Michael here with the next super chat. Put an Energizer Bunny on every line and really made everyone play hard. That is interesting. We haven't talked about what the lines were tonight, RJ, because these were some weird, interesting lines that I don't know that anybody kind of saw coming before this morning when they were, first displayed at morning skate.
Right. I was really wondering what they were going for with these line combos this morning. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but boy, did it work. And I like how you phrased it, Michael, too, with put an Energizer Bunny on every line. And I think that's kind of what happened, because you look at the line of Karche, Gordon, Tanev, and the energy that they brought pretty much every shift that they had. One school of thought, I guess, could be that if you break them up and distribute them onto different lines, that energy, that forechecking, all of that is going to be a little infectious. And it kind of was. I wouldn't think that would work, but apparently it did in this game. The line combos were fantastic, especially the Schwartz, Beniers, and Gord line. I mean, Yanni Gord was just unleashed to go out there and forecheck and just be that Energizer Bunny on that line. It felt like everybody benefited.
Yeah, I think this was the coaching staff looking at the Shane Wright Ellie Tolvanen, Oliver Bjorkstrand line. And, they had talked about this after the game, the Ducks games, the Sharks games, that kind of stuff. And you look at the goals that line was able to produce, and it was always one of them going in hard on the forecheck, the other two players kind of knowing what to do with that. But that initial chaos being caused usually by Ellie Tolvanen being the one who kicks it off, and the way that just throws off a defense. And Coach Dan talked about it after 2 of those games. The players on that line talked about it after 2 of those 3 games. And I think that was something where the coaching staff probably, they had a long plane ride. They were probably thinking about what they could do to get everybody kind of out of the funk that they've been in and break the 3-game losing streak. And you look at it and you go, well, hey, if this is working for that line and it's really waking these guys up, maybe that can work for everybody. And if we just kind of commit to playing a slightly simpler style of hockey here, RJ. They kept the skating, they kept the moving the puck up the ice approach, but they went a lot more simple in the offensive zone, where it's just somebody goes in hard, disrupts the defense, and then the other 2 players go out there and try to take advantage of wherever the next opening is. I think that is a much simpler approach, and we saw it executed really well tonight. I do agree that Yanni Gord, Jaden Schwartz, Matty Benier's line was the main beneficiary of that. It felt like tonight, but really, you were able to get production on that 4th line. Ryan Winterton was able to play well. You got Shane Wright's line playing well, and they pick up a goal. Ellie Tolvanen gets one. I think a lot of that really helped, but this was a kind of a weird middle ground, RJ, where they were able to start playing simpler hockey in the offensive zone, but still keep their full 200-foot offensive approach.
Right. And you look at players from all 4 lines tally points in this one too. With Winterton getting that assist, even tallying for the 4th line on the Tanev goal. Like, it's impressive stuff. And it kind of brings back that depth approach that the Kraken have. I won't get too far ahead of myself, but it does raise some interesting questions that Zoe brings up a couple super chats from now that we'll get to in a bit.
I know. Next super chat up is Patrick. Worth the 3x losses to get that one lol. From an emotional standpoint, I might agree with Patrick there. But yeah, from a standings points perspective, I don't know that I could agree.
Yeah. Having been to the game in San Jose, I can't agree.
That's true. That is true. That is true. And then Zoe here, where does Berkey fit back into the lineup? Also, done drawing penalties and not taking them. Sign me up. Let's start with the second half of that first real quick, RJ, because Vince Dunn is back. He looks incredible right now.
Yeah, he looks amazing. He is back to himself, and having him and Montour in the lineup has been a huge boost, because you're getting a player like that who can make those plays, find people for the majority of the game, because they both play so much. Vince Dunn was excellent in this one, and you saw it on the Tolvanen goal. Just the quick play he was able to make. Bjorkstrand passes it over to him, and he has, I don't know how to even time it, maybe a 1/10 of a second to try and make that pass and find somebody, but he does, and finds Bjorkstrand on the give and go, and it's just perfect. So love that from Vince Dunn. And yeah, he's drawing penalties. He's not taking them. That's another element of this game too that I think might be underrated as far as the Kraken's success here. Staying out of the box. They only take 1 penalty, and it's that covering the puck penalty that might have prevented a goal or a good chance there. But otherwise, they stay out of the box completely. And we saw how dangerous Carolina's power play was. They were 1 for 1 in this game. You give them 3-4 opportunities, I don't think you win this one.
Right. The Kraken are back to that, that not taking penalties thing that they were doing not that long ago when they were having more success. Like, it's just one of those things. If they could play that way, it certainly helps them out. Especially when you're playing a good team like a Carolina. Really, the way all the defense shook out, I know it's kind of a bummer not having Riker Evans out there. I do feel like having a third guy out there who can move the puck and help contribute was missed in this one. I think it meant that the power plays kind of had to get shaken up, where you have Vince Dunn on one and Montour on the other. You weren't able to kind of continue the experiment of having the 2 of them play together on one of your power play units because Riker was out. But Mahura comes in, plays well. I have no problem with the penalty he took, just because a puck loose out like that, I get why a player would cover that up. But Adam Larson, as great as Vince Dunn is playing, boy, just Adam Larson's back to being Adam Larson, RJ. He's waking up offensively. That D pairing had just crazy expected goal share when they were out there on the ice together. They were just funneling the puck up the ice and away from the defensive zone. But Adam Larson just looks like a different guy having his partner back.
Now, Dylan, how much do you think the cardboard cutouts played into that? The
Well, that
room
might have
full of
been it.
cardboard cutouts that the Kraken have.
Yeah, that
And
might
what's
have
the
been it.
plan there? Where are they going with this?
I have no idea. I mean, the only thing I can speculate is that maybe he's going to make Team Sweden for the Four Nations tournament, which would be surprising. Like, not going to
Not
lie.
on any of the projected rosters.
He's not on any of them. I don't know where that's coming from, what it's going to be used for. Maybe that's just what Vince Dunn was doing while he was out. And maybe they're just going to
Just
let
taking
us
all those
into what
cardboard
Vince Dunn.
cutouts,
Yeah,
yes.
he was just painstakingly putting together Adam Larson cardboard cutouts. I don't know what's going on there, but Adam Larson's feeling it. Vince Dunn's feeling it. And it's great to have them back. As for Andre Burakovsky, RJ, the first part of the super chat here from Zoe, I wasn't entirely surprised to see him out of the lineup just because, as I've been talking about, his performance really drops off when the team is on the road. And I looked at the splits, and from a points production standpoint, it doesn't really. But boy, from an eye test standpoint, he looks like a different guy on the road. And so I was wondering if they were maybe just experimenting with something like that.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised to see it either. I mean, heck, the amount of times that we've had chats in messages in the chat saying it's time to scratch Burakovsky, right? It's been maybe a month and a half that we've had a lot of those just about every game. So I'm not surprised to see it. And it does raise the interesting question, though, of if the Kraken are going to play this way and have this strategy, right, of the Energizer Buddy on every line, you're going to go grind it out. Where does Berkey fit back into this? And I mean, the answer really is just that he doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
He
mean,
just doesn't fit that style of hockey.
No, and if a guy like Ryan Winterton is going to be consistent for you, right? Even if he maybe doesn't end up having the highs that Berkey can bring when Berkey's feeling it and Berkey's on, just the fact that Ryan Winterton's going to be consistent for you is a big deal. The fact that Yanni Gourde just looks so comfortable on the wing. I'm glad they're finally doing that. We didn't even talk about that aspect of it, RJ. We've been talking forever about potentially moving Yanni out to the wing, given the center depth this team has. Yeah, it is one where there is no obvious place to kind of slot him back in right away. I think you could maybe wait and see if anything happens. You wait for a bad game where you maybe need to shake things up. Somebody else needs to come out of the lineup. But I think right now what this team has needed is just to find guys that are going to consistently perform and play a certain way. And guys like Daniel Sprong or Andre Burakovsky just have not been that for this group at all this year.
Yeah, simple as that. And I think if this continues to work, they want to keep playing this way. You can't be afraid to just scratch them.
Yeah. Now the next super chat, and they just keep piling up, and I know the regular chat's going crazy. So, apologies as we're making our way through everything, everybody. I know everybody's super excited after this one. Want to get this one from Elijah. Appreciate this. Just took the wife to her first Kraken game, and what a night. Kraken Nation is alive here in North Carolina. Ran into Forsland in the parking lot, and I think I scared him with my, hey, what do you say? I love that. Thanks for representing on the road there, Elijah. Hope you both had a great time. I'm sure you did with this one. And yeah, it did seem like there's a decent amount of Kraken fans in that building, RJ.
Yeah, and it's really noticeable too with the Carolina red sweaters and the Kraken blue that really contrast with it. You can see them in the crowd. And so really happy to hear that for you, Elijah. I'm sure you had a fantastic time. And even if John Forsland was a little startled there, I'm sure he enjoyed hearing that. He loves seeing the Kraken Nation, as he says, all the different chapters everywhere across the country.
Yes, I'm sure he was feeling it tonight. You could tell he was, so it's always one of those things when you go back to a place you were at for a long time like that. But yeah, this was a great game to go to. Great first Kraken game to be at for sure there.
One more thing on the Forsland front, the I'll Mahura you in a moment was a fantastic line to Edzo.
That was really good. No, he was feeling it. The Mark Cast here at the next super chat. Heading to dinner, we'll watch the VOD. What a win, boys. Let's go Canes. What an annoying chant. Almost as bad as the Vegas chants. Team message received. And I do think that there was a message here kind of received for the Kraken. I think it was one that the team was more or less on board with, RJ, just because of kind of how similar the words we heard from McCann and Coach Dan Bilesma were last game, and everybody acknowledging that, these results were not acceptable. And it was also going to be a very different story once they were on the road, once they were playing different teams. I think, though, this is another example of Dan being able to work with this group and being able to get more out of them and being able to be a little bit more creative with how they're deployed and what they do with them, and that communication. And just like, look, I mean, to make a big change to the lineup the way he did, and for it to work this way where every line kind of has a very consistent, similar style of play, means that that was really something that they all went over. This wasn't just a coach putting the lines through a blender. This was a coach changing the lines with a purpose, and all of those players understanding that purpose and then going out there and executing it. And we just didn't always see a lot of that prior to Dan coming in. And I think that really, it speaks a lot about who he is as a coach and how he's connected with this roster.
This feels different, doesn't it? When there are changes made, there's intentionality behind them. You know exactly what he's doing with them. And also, just I think as far as motivating the team and having them get that message that was received that, look, this is unacceptable. When you hit a rock bottom type point, like in that second game against San Jose, you need to send those strong messages. And first and foremost, I think just the fact that he's willing to bench veterans, that he's done a couple times
Yeah.
this season, and Andre Burakovsky being the latest example, that's real. That's a message to everybody that nobody is safe if you're not playing well enough. And I think message received. And that was a message that, frankly, Hackstall was afraid to send last season. And that who knows maybe how they could have turned it around if he had sent it.
Exactly. So this is why I've been a big believer in Dan, even when things haven't been going great for the team, is just because we have seen him be willing to do things like that, whether it's scratching a veteran or just really shake things up. But again, shake things up with a purpose, and to be able to go out there and get the most out of the group. Light with the next super chat. I think today was really big for Matty, both for the points and because he showed he can generate offense without McCann or Eberle. I think you bring up a really interesting point there, Light, because that is true. I mean, Matty picks up a pair of assists in this one. He had talked kind of pregame earlier this morning, RJ, about how having Yanni out there really kind of frees him up, because Yanni is another kind of natural fellow center. He can kind of help him out defensively, or I think really what it ended up happening was help him out in the offensive zone, where he could kind of take over for certain areas on the ice where Matty hasn't necessarily always wanted to be naturally. Matty wants to be a little bit more on the perimeter, but having Yanni Gourde kind of go in, drive the net, it really cleared out some more space for Matty to be able to work to the interior and then kind of make offense happen from there.
Right. Yanni being added to his line was huge. And then Jaden Schwartz, too, who, I mean, he scored a goal that was not really a Jaden Schwartz goal that we normally think of, going with speed through a couple defenders. But Schwartz and Gourde are the two most grinded out net front type guys that you could put with Matty Beniers. And it's good to see that working. It was one of those lines that was a little head scratching before the game, because you are taking him away from a lot of the more skill guys. And I was wondering if he could produce without them, but seems like at least through one game, the answer is yes.
Yeah, no, it looks like they can, because you know what, RJ? That line, boy, could they cycle the puck. When was the last time we saw a Kraken line cycle the puck as well as and as efficiently as those guys did? And not just like, oh, they could kind of continuously move it back into the corner and somebody would always be there in the corner or behind the net, and they could just kind of get it back and forth like that. They would kind of go through like one rotation of the cycle, just like one handoff, and then immediately they were sending it to somebody in the slot. Like, they just very much seem to understand, like, this is how we need to approach the offensive zone. And they were just all on the same page together in a way that we really have not seen a Kraken team, or line, I should say, play in potentially ever, really.
Well, that's the big difference too, because you asked when was the last time we saw a line cycle that effectively, and I think it's probably the Gourde, Tanev, and Karche line from earlier this season. But the big difference there is this line has a level of skill that the other line just doesn't have, and so they can make those quicker plays earlier in the cycle. That Gourde, Tanev, Karche line, they've got to cycle it for a long time, work to the point, kind of bang something out, get a greasy goal. This line has the skill to take it to the middle a little bit quicker and finish on some of those.
Yeah, so that is some good stuff. Next super chat here from Schultz. Does Berkey have trade value at 50% retained, RJ?
Probably not much.
Yeah.
Given the length of the contract, probably not much.
Yeah, I'm with you.
if any.
I don't think so. And then latest one here from Ben. Have not been very present this year. Prepping to move back to Washington in February. Awesome, Ben. Can't wait to have you back. But what a game to be at in person. Truthfully, Joey looked leaky, but the Kraken D today was out of this world. We haven't talked about the defense too much, RJ. We talked about Vince Dunn being back and what that's meant for him and Adam Larson. But the defense did step up in a big way because, as much as we want to talk about in the first period, especially this being a very back and forth game and the Kraken being able to dictate the pace and style of the game, that really does start with the defense being able to shut down Carolina fast in the defensive zone and then get the puck moving up the ice. And boy, the Kraken were really able to do that. Very few times in this game did it feel like the Kraken were pinned down in the defensive zone the way it kind of did through those last couple losses.
And it's the little things that you don't really notice all the time when they go right, like the zone exits. If you have a defenseman that's dealing with some pressure, gets the puck off to another player real quick, who then makes another pass out of the zone, you don't really pay a ton of attention to that because, okay, now it's the neutral zone and can you attack, right? But when it goes wrong, you sure notice it. And we saw it go wrong early in this game, actually, where it wasn't the defense. It was Shane Wright, who unfortunately just kind of flubbed a pass from Vince Dunn, but it goes right back into the Kraken's net very quickly. But there just wasn't a whole lot of mistakes like that afterward. And so them being able to clean it up in that way was absolutely huge. And that's a focus thing too. It requires 60 minutes of focus. And it feels like it's been a while since we've seen them bring that full 60 minutes, but they definitely did tonight. I mean, just the turnovers were limited to almost nothing.
Right. And that is absolutely huge for them. Joey, like the concerns I kind of still feel about him being overworked are there, RJ, although in this one it felt more like he was taking interesting angles on things. He was playing very aggressive at times in ways I wasn't sure that aggressive approach was really needed. I don't know how much of that is fatigue, like mental fatigue, RJ, versus maybe, lost a couple games and he's just trying to get back and he's maybe being a little too aggressive with it.
I think that could be part of it. I mean, what worried me the most, I guess, was just struggling to find the puck in his equipment a couple times where it felt like it kind of leaked through him, even if it didn't leak straight through him, and then find it afterward too. He was kind of looking around, couldn't tell where the puck was going. That's the kind of thing that tells me a goalie maybe isn't 100% dialed in. I'm sure it's something that he can figure out and fix, but within a game, it can get a little iffy, but that's why it's so important the D played as well as they did.
Given that he's done that a couple games now in a row, and one of the ideas behind Grubauer's poor performance in San Jose being that he was just rusty because it had been 12 days between starts for him, do you think on this road trip we see Grubauer worked in maybe a little bit more?
Maybe. Look, my
I know it's
plans
tough.
were, because my plan to work him in, if you were going to work him in, was just to kind of give him some of the scheduled losses, right? Because there's no chance that you're beating these good teams, in New York, New Jersey, Carolina. But wait, you did beat Carolina. Okay, you can beat these good teams.
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't know that you can risk playing Grubauer against these other teams. They have a back-to-back the next two games.
Mm-hmm.
If he is on the roster, he's going to have to get one of those two games. Now I wonder which one you put him in. I don't know. I guess give him the next one against the Islanders. It is the easier of the two, and he has had good games against the Islanders in the past, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. The more I think about it too, because we talked about it on the podcast a little bit with Grubauer, and do you give him more runway, right? It still scares me putting him in.
It does. No, I mean, like, I think that's very legitimate. I got to imagine there'd be a lot of people, in that same boat there. I would play him in the Islanders game because I just think it sends a better message. It sends a better message to Gru, I think, and I think it sends a better message to the group also, because then you aren't being like, you aren't entering a game against the Devils where it's like, okay, even the coach is maybe thinking we're going to lose this one, right? Like, I think for the morale in the room, I think like it's better if you really kind of maneuver things in a way that says, hey, I think we could pick up both of these, and that's, I believe in you guys.
I guess so. Yeah, going forward with confidence. That probably is best for morale, but man, it's risky because if it happens again against New York, this next game, you need a win. You need to build something off of this Carolina game. If you lose to the Islanders, remember, the Islanders are not good. If you lose to the Islanders, feels like you're kind of back where you were and this win was an anomaly. You just need it.
Right.
So
And the last game you played against the Islanders was close, and it was one in which Joey bailed you out of.
yes, Grubauer would have lost if he had played that game. So yeah, I don't know.
It's just one of those situations where right now Joey can't bail you out of it. Like, I
That's
don't know
true.
that you're necessarily like, if you need a goalie to bail you out of the game against the Islanders, or it really like the getting a win against the
Yeah.
Islanders depends on what goalie you're playing. You're really not operating from a place of strength. I think you have to assume that you can beat the Islanders regardless of who's in net, and not have to rely on either of them to kind of bail you out of that game. That would just be my approach anyway. All right, so that does it for the super chats here.
35 minutes in.
But yes,
Thank you,
35
everybody. We
minutes
do
in.
appreciate that.
Yeah, I think there was like 140 something chats. So I'm probably not going to be able to hit everybody's. Just a heads up for you all. Going to go like extreme speed run through this, RJ, and then we'll probably settle down at the bottom, and people can repost what they want to. Let's see. Daniel, even though we may not be the best team, Seattle fans always show up. A lot of empty seats in this Carolina game. I noticed that too. There was a lot of empty seats there. Yeah. Aaron, of course, this happens after last week. What a game. Just an all around great performance. It really was. David, the last 3 minutes of that game were so long. I thought I was watching the NBA. I did too. I mean, as much as I and you agree with the whole icing the puck strategy, boy, the end of that game took forever, especially after how fast the game was going.
Definitely. And, we try and work on the final score graphics to make sure that they're ready for this, and not knowing an empty net goal is coming. It just felt like forever.
It really did. I was just sitting there watching the battery on my laptop drain. I'm like, come on, guys. B, shout out to the video coaches for that goalie interference challenge. Love to see it. That was another good one, RJ. And we know with this Kraken team and that video room that they have, they are above average when it comes to getting that stuff. And that was just a huge momentum play.
Yeah, that's a gutsy one too, because it was right on the edge of the crease where that skate was. I think you could make an argument both ways on that. I really wasn't confident one way or another which way that was going, but the video room, they have to make a call right away, and they have to tell the coach. And if you lose that challenge too, you're going shorthanded. The other team's 1-for-1 on the power play. You're down a goal. That's probably game over for you.
Yeah. No, you absolutely have to go with it there. And yeah, you maybe get a little lucky, especially because it looked like Joey maybe initiates some of that contact.
I thought so.
Very aggressively playing kind of up and out of his crease, and it was sketchy, but they got it done. They know what they're looking at, and that's good stuff.
And I will say, for those who weren't happy about the goal being disallowed in the last game, the one in San Jose, right at the very end, how it was, very generous to the goalie, right, for goalie interference. They're also pretty generous to Joey here. So there's a little bit of consistency at least.
Yes. I was definitely seeing people saying that on the Discord. It was good. Angela Bug, Disco enthusiastically pointing at the Kraken jerseys was great. That was great, RJ, as he was kind of walking off the bench there, really pointing out the Kraken fans that were behind him all game long. I just love the way he's able to kind of be in the moment and interact with people in that way.
Yeah, connecting with fans is awesome. Whenever you see a coach do that, it makes the fans' day too.
Yeah. Lindsay, can't beat the Ducks or Sharks, but sure, let's dominate the Canes. This team is drunk. Maybe it's all just a big like Thanksgiving hangover type situation, RJ.
I get pre and post Thanksgiving. Yeah, sure. Why not? It's as good as any other explanation. I have no better explanation for what they're doing.
Right? Like that's just the way it is. Michael, a turbo breakaway goal, hell house frozen over. It really does feel that way. Byron, really happy for Winterton for sure. Lots of people just being like how weird kind of this game is. Matthew, it seems like this team's quality is the reverse of the fan base's expectations of them. Should we all be in a perpetual state of skepticism so that they go undefeated for the rest of the season? I do think there is an element of that. I feel like there's always an element of that in hockey, RJ, but it really does feel like that is this group, whether it's that playing up or down to competition thing or this. I feel like those are kind of both in the same vein, where with this organization, with this group of players, let's say the veteran core, most specifically, if we want to kind of build off of the deep dive yesterday, kind of what I was talking about at the beginning of this, right? Jared McCann, Dan talking about you can approach these games. You just do approach these games differently when you know that you're the underdog. I really do think that there is something to this group where it does take them kind of having to walk into a game with a chip on their shoulder for them to kind of go out there and give that kind of full 60 effort, play consistently, go out there shift after shift after shift, trying to grind it out, going in hard on the forecheck, trying to play that full 200-foot game on offense. Just feels like they do need that to be able to play this way.
Well, I mean, I guess clearly because it's something the coach identified even before this game, right? He must be reading that. Where I mean, it's funny. It reminds me of the Herb Brooks line, what in the movie Miracle, where you don't have enough talent to win on talent alone. Feels like
Right.
when they get that message, they play the right way.
Right. And hockey is a sport where you can do that, right? Whether it's obviously the 1980 team or this Kraken team doing two very different things, but that is it. And there just does seem to be that vibe with this group for whatever reason. They really need that. Maybe it's because they got so many undrafted guys, RJ. Maybe it's just like they're more comfortable having that kind of feeling of everything's against them. I don't know. Sarah, they always save their most impressive wins for games I can't watch live. Oh well, go Kraken. Sorry, Sarah. Well, hopefully they get you next time. Bryce, Shane's still under 15 minutes of ice time. Need to juice that up. I agree that needs to get bumped up. RJ, I'm trying to check to see what he had in this one, because it is still possible that he did get an increase from what he's been getting.
Yeah, he had 14:59.
All right, so we're splitting hairs, Bryce, with the under 15 minutes of ice time. He's under by a second. Come on. That is still an increase from what he's been getting, and that feels more appropriate for what he should be getting.
Yeah, and I did put a tweet out earlier today, right before the game, that I mean didn't age very well through the first period. But I do stand by the point in general that I mean Shane has never played more than 16 minutes and 17 seconds in an NHL game, which is much less opportunity than a lot of his peers have. Yuri Slavkovsky has 72 games with more ice time than Shane's career high. Leo Carlson, 58, Logan Cooley, 49. He is getting a lot less ice time than other similar players. And so it's the kind of thing that I think he does need to get more for his development. In this game, though, with that mistake early on, I understood right away, okay, he's not getting a new career high ice time tonight. And I'm okay with that in this one.
Yeah, and when that happened, RJ, I put it in the Discord, but we weren't able to really get a good replay of it, because all the replays that they showed on the Kraken Hockey Network looked like they were shot from the moon or something, where it was just like as far away as we could possibly be. Do you think he just kind of took his eye off it a little bit? Like it was one of those situations where a receiver doesn't watch the ball into their hands. They start turning their head upfield a little bit too soon, and that's what happened there.
I don't. I think what actually happened, because it hits him right in the tape. It hits him on the stick. I think he's trying to make another immediate pass over to the other side. And I think he tries to make that pass, makes the motion, and the puck just goes under his stick. So I think that's what happened there. He was trying to move it immediately.
Yeah, and that was happening a lot to the Kraken tonight. There was a lot of instances of that. Daniel, my birthday is tomorrow, but this game made it feel like it was today. Well, happy early birthday, Daniel. Hope you enjoy the day tomorrow. Viren, this effort made me wonder if the illness issues weren't limited to Stevenson. Not that we'll ever know. And I know some people were speculating on this the last couple of days on the Discord, RJ. It is a theory to explain kind of why the last 3 games went the way they did.
Right. And it's hard to imagine that in a locker room full of 23 guys, that just one guy gets sick and is feeling the effects of it. It would certainly help explain how things went against San Jose. I'll say that much.
Yes. From Bertsky here, this would be a good question for you, RJ. Realistically, would it be possible for the Kraken to buy out both Berkey and Grubauer? I'm still fairly new to the NHL, but does this have a negative effect to the cap going into next year?
So it is possible, and it is something realistically they could do if they wanted to go that direction. As far as the negative effect on the cap, I mean, you will still have a cap charge and some dead money for those buyouts, but the Kraken will have enough cap space, certainly with the salary cap expected to go up by a lot next year. They'll have the cap space to deal with that dead money. So it is a possibility for them, but yeah, there will be longer term effects. There will be about 4 years of dead money that's on those buyouts.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, then save it for another time. Amanda, thank God Dylan must be so dehydrated. I did need that. RJ, I see Light's got a new super chat down there. Do you mind grabbing that so I don't lose my place up top? Thank you.
I gotcha. This from Light. Fun Kraken fact: all drafted Kraken players' first point has been an apple. Only Ty Karche, the undrafted guy, scored his first with a goal. That is a fun fact.
That is a very fun fact. Very interesting. Gotta love this team. There you go. As we were, we're searching for consistency with the Kraken. There's the consistency.
Yeah, you have to have an assist before you can score a goal. Unless you weren't drafted, then just go for it, kid. In the
Yes.
playoffs and everything. Yeah.
Yes. Definitely. And it looks like maybe another super chat there.
Yes. This one from Kendall here. Thank you so much, Kendall. Paying for my ECH therapy because the Kraken have finally driven me insane. All those losses for a win against the Canes. This team. We are feeling very much the same way, and happy to provide some Emerald City therapy there. And thank you for paying for it there. I don't know what to make of this team. Like I think after the last game too. I mean, it was a while before you arrived because of all the
Yeah.
coaching stuff with the interviews. But so much of the last post game was me just being honest with everybody, saying I'm just trying to figure out what this team is. I have no more answers now than I do then. Probably less, but at least I'm happier.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I kind of came to this especially after this kind of rough patch that they had been on, and I think tonight kind of confirms it. And I was talking about it a little bit earlier today on the Discord. It's hockey. It's an 82 game season, so you kind of have to look at everything, in larger trends. That's just kind of really the best way to look at it. And when we are doing something like a post game live after every game, it is easy to kind of ride the roller coaster of the up and down performances. But in hockey, where you could play really well and have a really bad result at the end of it, or you could play really poorly but walk away with a victory easier than in most other sports. I do think there is something to kind of looking more for the larger trends, taking it more week by week rather than game by game all the time, even though that's just not really how we're wired these days. That's not really how media industries are made and how we have to kind of approach things, RJ. But I really think that that's more so kind of where this Kraken group is at, is just kind of being patient through the individual games and looking at those larger sequences together.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think we'll need to see more than just this one game, right? I think it
Yeah.
easily could go back to it looking like, okay, they are who we thought they were before this one. So that's the importance of keeping this kind of thing going because, and I mean, you look at their spot in the standings too. They've still got ground to make up.
Yeah. Rogue Wave Creative, San Jose beat Washington tonight. They are a good team right now. I mean, again, and also looking at a larger picture, San Jose is just kind of going through one of those streaks at the moment, RJ. Yes, the Kraken were able to feed into it, but they had already kind of hit a little bit of their stride before those games against the Kraken, and they're continuing it after this. There are just times where you run into a team that is just kind of going through a good streak, right? Where they are figuring things out and they are gelling and they are playing well. I don't want to absolve the Kraken of all of the issues that they had in those two games, but I think it is okay to acknowledge that there was a little element of that to them.
Yeah, I think a little bit too. And yeah, the Sharks have 4 wins in their last 5. Like that's impressive. It'll be interesting to see. They've got Tampa, Florida, and Carolina coming up, how they do in that stretch, because it's going to be a big challenge.
Yeah, definitely. Scott here, Mitchell Stevens. Want to talk about Mitchell Stevens, RJ? Because I do think he came in and he played good again.
Yeah, he did. I mean, he's just kind of been this solid, steady force on the fourth line. I like what he's brought. He's kind of been the forward version of Josh Mahura, I feel like, where he's not, producing a ton or doing anything that's going to jump out at you, but he plays his 9 minutes. He plays really solid and kind of helps be part of the identity of that line. And also being a center, he allows Yanni Gourde to move to wing and you to make those changes there.
Right. And I feel like, especially with what the Kraken now kind of want to do, where they want to be a little bit more chaotic in the offensive zone and or cycle a little bit more consistently, I feel like he's a better fit for that spot than Ben Myers was when we saw Ben Myers earlier in the season. Ben Myers is great at playing that 200-foot offensive game and trying to attack with speed, but he's a little smaller. He's not able to really get the cycle going. He's not really able to, in some ways, kind of elevate his teammates or take defensive pressure off of them in a way that Mitchell Stevens is able to. And the other big key thing is, you said it, take his 9 minutes, right? Like by having him out there as one of your centers, having Yanni off of that spot, you don't feel like you need to give the fourth line a bunch of ice time. Because that was kind of one of the issues we talk about, Shane Wright not necessarily getting as much ice time as he needs, maybe even some of the other groups on this team, Jared McCann, whichever line he's on. By having a true fourth line center in that spot, RJ, it means that the coaching staff can say, yeah, you guys are only going to get 13 shifts tonight. and we're going to give more shifts to the rest of the group in a way that when you have Stevenson, Maddie, Shane, and Yanni all down the middle, and you're trying to give everybody 15-ish minutes, you can't do. I think Mitchell Stevens, one of the best things about him and what he's really bringing to this group is just the fact that you can take ice time away from him and give it to somebody else.
That's right. He is a fourth liner. And now you look at the fourth line as it is now, and it's a proper fourth line. Exactly. It's a line that you don't mind sitting for long stretches if you do want to stack the lines. And that's something that we've been advocating for even back to the Hackstall days, right? To really stack your top lines and play them a little bit more. I think at least on the fourth line side of it, we're seeing that.
Yep, definitely. Josh, Yanni Gourde entering his winger era. Gotta love that for Yanni Gourde. Can't wait to hear all about it many years from now in some sort of long form concert maybe. Chris, of course, wearing Kraken gear on my flight tonight. Met a guy who went to ASU with Joey D. Good omens. That's got to be fun. That's got to be really cool.
No, I'm sure that was fun. I wonder if you met Joey or anything, had good stories.
Yeah, I'm wondering about that too. I was just going to say, how wild would it have been to be at ASU when, you know, they get that hockey program going and everything, and you're going to those games, and then you see a guy that you watched in that situation. I'm sure nobody was thinking you were going to be seeing, you know, that goaltender being a starting goaltender, one of the top guys in the NHL at some point in the future. There's just no way, right?
No, they had just gone D1 also. Like
yeah.
They had never been D1 before. They were just like a club team, right? I mean, it's incredible the jump that they made and so quickly, but that's what Joey always talks about. Be the tradition. And he was the tradition.
Definitely. Moose, I predicted after the last Sharks game that the Kraken were going to go undefeated over the next 13 games. So far, I have been right. There we go. It's Moose called it.
Yep. It's been spoken into existence here. I'm sure. How many is 13? How far does that get us?
It gets us through most of the month, I would imagine.
I would think so. Yeah.
I would take that.
It gets us, I think, to the end of the year.
Yeah. And you know, who was best known for just winning a whole month out of the schedule back in the day, RJ? A team that could just go out there, or more specifically a coach of a certain team that could go out there and just win a whole calendar month in a row.
Dan Bylsma could do it.
Yep. Those Penguins teams sure somehow always won the month of March. I think there was like a 2 or 3 year stretch where they only lost like 2 games in the month of March, back-to-back years. It was crazy. So I'm just saying, maybe there's something about that with Dan Bylsma. Michael, forecheck. When these guys win on the walls, they win games. I think the coaching staff is right there with you, Michael, and that's why we saw the situation that we did here tonight. Let's see, kind of keep it going. Imagine if we could bring this every game and improve the power play. Be nice.
Yeah. And the power play, man, Edzo, and I think rightfully so, but he was going off on the power play again tonight. I think he's seen enough again of the power play just to know it needs some massive changes. And it felt like, again, if things had gone slightly differently, I think if the Kraken maybe had even just taken a second penalty when it was tied, this could have been one of those unfortunate games that was decided in a negative way. Okay, I'll stop.
No, that's not to you. Okay. Go for it. No, go for it. It's because the box score for this game stopped working on NHL.com, so I can't look at ice time because I was kind of preloading for the next one.
I can help you there.
Yeah, I have no ice time numbers. Apparently, no forwards, defensemen, or goalies played for the Kraken tonight.
See, that's the key. If you can just do that every game.
If you could just somehow manage to not have to play anybody, you're good. Well, it's because the next one I was going to read was Viren. Please tell me we aren't talking seriously about Brandon Tanev as the number one right wing as a long-term thing. I will acknowledge it worked this game, but come on. And so I was going to try to see how much ice time that line had versus the Maddie, Yanni, Schwartz line, just to kind of, maybe it's picking hairs there, but I did not think that one was the first line. I wouldn't classify it as.
No, it wasn't. And I saw the Viren comment earlier, actually, and I was curious myself. So I went ahead and looked it up. And the McCann, Stevenson, Tanev line at 5-on-5 had the third most ice time. So it was kind of a close second and third with the Shane line, but they certainly weren't the first line. That was clearly the Schwartz, Beniers, and Gourde line. And then Tanev himself, I believe, had 16:59 of ice time in this game, 46 seconds of it shorthanded, 1 second of it on the power play. So that was kind of funny. But yeah, no, he didn't really play like a first liner, at least ice time wise.
Right. And it's one of those things too where, I'm starting to feel like whichever line Stevenson is centering kind of becomes your lost line of like this, what does this line become? And I'm hopeful that as Shane continues to play well and grows and develops over the course of this year, that Shane can kind of whatever line Shane has becomes your line two, Maddie's line can stay your line one, and then Stevenson's line becomes your third line. I it seems like maybe we are trending in that direction, but it does feel like kind of regardless of who Chandler Stevenson is playing with, and he even got Jared McCann tonight, and it was arguably the least I've ever noticed Jared McCann in a Kraken sweater. Whoever's out there with Chandler Stevenson, that line just doesn't really produce. It produces in some ways negatively in the defensive zone, just kind of regardless of who's out there. So I would like to see the ice time kind of worked back for whoever's going to be with Stevenson. That being said, I like Tanev with Stevenson because I do feel like he offsets kind of some of the issues that Stevenson has.
Right, especially in the D zone. And I think
Yes.
especially in a game where the Kraken led for as long as they did, that was extra effective. And that might be a reason why they got a little bit more ice time than they otherwise would have to, because they were defending a lead for a lot of this game, which in that case, yeah, if you're not producing either way, right, you want a Brandon Tanev out there. He's going to help you defensively. And
Right.
Byron Tanev was fourth among forwards in even strength ice time. Again, I know, but I think it was a lot of it defending a lead.
I mean, he was out there for the
DK
last like
juices that.
3 minutes
Yeah.
of that game. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say this too. Also, just looking at on Money Puck, the expected goals percentage for the lines, you have the Beniers line at 95.3% when they were out there. Obviously, they were cooking. The Shane Wright line at 52.8%, Stevenson line at 36.2%. So again, and then the Stevens line 72.3. So yeah, that Stevenson line very much the odd line out when it comes to being able to produce and kind of win the battles when they're out there. The
Yeah.
possession
And
battle.
I probably should skip this comment, but Andrew says, "So glad we get that for 7 more years." It's 6 more. It's 6.
It's only 6 more. Yes. Yeah, we just don't think about that. We have other things to
Yeah.
think about.
Yeah.
Let's see. Habak, we have to force the Islanders into overtime or a shootout. They've lost 7 games in extra hockey already this season. All right, there's the key to beating the Islanders. Let's just keep it close, get them to overtime. They'll just crumble.
I'd be okay with that.
It's funny too because like honestly, not surprising. Could you imagine that Islanders team succeeding at 3-on-3 hockey, RJ? Because I just cannot.
Are you telling me Matt Martin, Casey Cizikas, and whoever their third guy is, wouldn't do great at 3-on-3?
Yeah, no, I
Adam Pelech.
for whatever reason, I just don't feel it for some reason. Becca, amazing US Thanksgiving would be such a big distraction for a team of mostly Canadians and Europeans. It's just the vibe. It's the vibe of it all. It just throws off the routine,
Yeah. No, it's really the start of, I don't know, maybe the start of Christmas season or something, because everyone just skips over Thanksgiving anyway. I'm not mad about it.
Yeah, that is true. We are closing in on the hour mark here, RJ. I'm kind of down at the bottom of a chat. If I skipped over anything anybody wants read, you can count this as a last call. Feel free to put it in at the bottom. But I do think that we can kind of start looking ahead a little bit to this Islanders game, RJ. Maybe preview that for a couple minutes here. We've already talked about the goaltending situation and kind of what our thoughts are there, potentially running Philip Grubauer for that one, given his, solid history against that team. And then you could save Joey for the tougher Devils game and the message that sends to the group as a whole. I would be shocked if we saw any lines change moving into the next one, just given how well things played out in this.
Yeah, I think you want to run back with this. And look, it worked against Carolina. It should be able to work against the Islanders. Like there's no skill deficit compared to the Carolina game. So I think you want to stick with that. And the Islanders too. I mean, Bilesma said, look, in this game, it's going to be a lot of wall battles. It's going to be a lot of physical stuff, which is why he lined up the way that he did. That's going to be no different against the Islanders. I think they're going to try and outmuscle you. Being configured this way probably helps, I would say.
Yeah, I think so. I think this would match up a lot better against the Islanders, especially if you're able to dictate the pace of play like you were tonight, because Carolina was able to keep up with you and things were pretty even there through that first period. Islanders are not going to be able to keep up with you. right? Like you're going to skate, poor like Anders Lee and Brock Nelson into the ground, Bo Horvat. If you tried to play the way, if you force them into a game the way you forced Carolina into the game tonight. So I think if the Kraken are able to kind of do that same thing and establish it, that's going to be great. Now, on the flip side, the Islanders are going to have looked at this game. They're going to see what the Kraken did tonight. It would not surprise me if they came out and they really, RJ, just tried to play the most New York Islanders game of all time, where it is just slow moving the puck up the ice from them. You're just holding on to it, forcing the Kraken to just kind of skate backwards slowly and establish and defend the blue line. And they were just going to play that way, dump it in, dump and chase, go in there with the bigger bodies and just start laying it and making sure, in similar ways to what Carolina did in the first game in Seattle, RJ, that the Kraken are just not able to move the puck up the ice with speed. I think if you're the Kraken, you have to assume that that's the approach the Islanders are going to be taking because, one, they kind of already did it like a week and a half ago to you, and two, that would be the only way that they could beat you.
Yeah, it really would be. And if I'm the Islanders, that's the blueprint, because if you can just keep it low scoring enough where it's a close game or a tied game, using special teams, because that's still the Kraken's weakness at this point. If you can just get a power play goal here and there and you can kill off all the Kraken power plays, which a lot of teams have been able to successfully do, that's your recipe to winning the game.
Yeah. And then, Kitty B Kraken here. So where was this team the past 3 games? What changed? How can we recreate it going forward? I really think it was them feeling like an underdog and feeling like they had to come out and play a certain way if they were going to get an upset victory. What I'm worried about is now that you have that upset victory, RJ, you feel good about yourself. Maybe it's a little harder to have that same mentality, particularly in a game against the Islanders. I would say really like the key for this next game is just like to keep that chip on your shoulder. Don't let that go away. Don't be satisfied with tonight. Feel like you have to do this again at least a couple more times before you can kind of sit back and relax a little.
Right. And that's how you build an identity of playing the way that they're playing right now. You have to have a few games that builds on it. And I think the Kraken were maybe searching for answers and trying different things and it wasn't working. Now that they've had success, hopefully they take that as a message to kind of come in with that same mindset, play the same simplified type of game and do that going forward. And yeah, just don't get complacent. Because I think that's what happened. The Kraken got a lot of wins that we talked about it on post games. Even after a win, we're like, okay, they didn't really play well enough to deserve this. They were just facing a bad team. Can't let that get in your head, especially after a game where you did deserve it. Like you played against a good team, you beat them. Can't let that get to your head.
Yep, exactly. So those would be the keys to the game, I think, for both of us. Looking forward to it, though, in 2 nights, RJ. Excited for it. It is a 4:30 start out here on the West Coast, so it's a half hour later, and it looks like a national game as well, just to let everybody know for viewing reasons. Excited for it. Still pumped about this one, RJ. Excited also because there's a lot of the evening left to go and do stuff. That's a change. That's a change. Thanks. I want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to thank everybody for all the super chats and all the good vibes here from everyone. Really appreciate it. After how the last couple games were going, I think it was very much needed for all of us. So yeah, just appreciate it. Can't wait for the next one, and I think we'll see you all next time.